Hi, everybody. Welcome into the Bulls Talk podcast brought to you by Toyota. Let's go places. I am Kevin Anderson, joined by my good friend K.C. Johnson, our Bulls insider for NBC Sports Chicago and NBCSportsChicago.com. By the way, quick shout out to the coaches of the youth Bulls camp going on at the Advocate Center this week. My son is taking part of that, and he loves it. Our friend Will Perdue was one of the speakers at the camp this week, along with Eddie Curry, speaking to the kids about fundamentals and the love of basketball and all things. So just shout out to everybody organizing at the Advocate Center this week with the Bulls Youth Camp. My son is absolutely enjoy every day coming home after that camp. Casey, let's dive into a couple things. We've got some summer league stuff to talk about. I want to first start with the story you wrote a couple days ago on our website. So anybody who hasn't read it, please check it out, on Billy Donovan and his son, Billy Donovan III, and the path that BD3 has taken to try and get to the NBA. It can be tough because of the having a famous father can be difficult at times. There's certainly outside perceptions that play into it, and we'll dive into a little bit of that. But first, I want to ask you about your conversations with both of them. Did anything surprise you in kind of talking to either of them about Billy Donovan III's path that he's taken?
Nothing really surprised me because they're both. I didn't know Billy Donovan III at all, but Billy, I know pretty well, just having covered him for the last 4 years, and they're just both very direct. They're both the word I always use with elder Billy is he's just so consistent. His personality is so consistent, and he's also very low maintenance. I mean, he's just kind of the same guy every day, and you can see that in his son as well. So nothing really surprised me. I think obviously the point I was trying to make, and I wrote this in the article, is that having a father who's accomplished can be both a blessing and a curse. I mean, the blessing obviously is that you've got, success in your genes, and you've got probably a pathway to a lot of connections and relationships and opportunities because of your father. But as Billy the Elder pointed out, and this is the point I really tried to make in the article, is like he can open those doors for his son, but it's up to his son to take advantage of those opportunities. And the other thing that Billy does is he just provides his son with the information and the relationships. He might give him a number or something, but then he's out. Like, it's on his son to do the work. And I wrote in the piece a line that I think really should be the theme of the story, is like Billy Donovan III is traveling the path to be an NBA coach that anybody, even without his famous last name, would travel. I mean, video coordinator, JV high school coach, G League assistant coach, now G League head coach. I mean, he's grinding, and sure, he's got a famous dad and famous last name, and his dad has introduced him to some famous people. But this guy's put in the work, and he's put in the hours, and he's grinding. And I asked them both point blank. The actual word I used was nepotism. I mean, and Billy Donovan III said, "Look, I've been dealing with that my whole life, and I use that as motivation. It just makes me want to work harder." So I have a lot of respect for what Billy Donovan III is trying to do. Being a video coordinator is not an easy job. Being a G League assistant is not an easy job. You're, washing laundry sometimes, planning buses, that kind of stuff. It's not a glamorous lifestyle. So and Billy Donovan III, be the first to tell you, this is an incredible opportunity, what he's been given. Summer League head coach, G League head coach. But given's the wrong word. He's quite frankly earned this with the way he's grinded to this point, and I'm excited to see what he does with this opportunity.
Certainly the benefit of having, Billy Donovan as his father is he's had access to talk to some of the best minds in basketball. I know you mentioned the piece. He's had long conversations with Monty Williams, Jeff and Stan Van Gundy. So certainly I think for someone who is inquisitive, someone who enjoys exploring ideas, having access to just talk to those individuals is probably the biggest benefit that he has been given because of the relationship. But this isn't a situation in which he has been working at an accountant firm for the last 10 years, and all of a sudden the Bulls are like, okay, you're going to be our G League head coach. He has spent years and years behind the scenes. And I thought it was one of the things I thought was interesting is um, he originally started his playing career college wise at Catholic University in DC, which is a Division III school, and then eventually transferred to be a walk on at University of Florida. He fell in love with the game, the coaching style of the game, I think because of that experience at Florida. Did I kind of like, is that impression correct?
Yeah, and absolutely. And he didn't mean this critically of his, actually, his father shared this anecdote with me. I didn't talk to Billy Donovan III about it, but Billy didn't mean this critically of his teammates at Catholic because, I played D3 ball. I mean, you can be serious about basketball when you're at the D3 level, but Billy Donovan III basically transferred from Catholic University, which was Division III in DC, to Florida, mostly because he just wanted to be around people who saw basketball as a potential occupation. And if you're playing D3 basketball, in large part, you're not going to turn that into a post-college career. I mean, there actually is a pretty recent trend with a lot of coaches traveling that route. You've got Will Hardy, Tom Thibodeau, Greg Popovich. I mean, there's actually quite a few. And our friend Danny Parkins was on this very podcast talking about the book he wrote with the pathway to the pros. But in large part, there's more serious-minded, occupationally thinking basketball players at the Division I level than at the Division III level. And that's why Billy Donovan III transferred. And to your point, he was obviously not playing a lot as a walk-on at Florida. His dad joked that he was only getting in if we were up 20 or down 20, which I thought was fantastic. And he started going back, Billy Donovan III started going back at night to the gym and working out some of his teammates. And that's when he first caught the coaching bug. It's crazy that took that. I mean, growing up with his dad, it took that experience for it to really click in and move from kind of thinking about it as a player perspective to a coaching perspective. But he's run with it ever since.
By the way, the slight correction, it's Pipeline to the Pros is the Danny Parkins book.
Sorry, Danny.
Yeah. So just a plug for Danny.
We give you a whole podcast, Danny. Go back and check out that
episode. I thought was also interesting how he expressed how he gets joy from coaching. And that's seeing the small incremental improvements that players make when it comes to development. Because I guess I'll first ask this question. What's his ultimate end goal? Is it to be a NBA head coach like his father?
Interviewing Faux Pas, I did not ask that direct question. That would have been a great question to ask. So, you're in summer league. You're not always firing not all cylinders.
It's okay.
But look, man, I mean, if you're doing what he's doing, I mean, Eric Spoelstra, video coordinator to head coach, Will Hardy, video coordinator to head. I mean, that's kind of the end game, I would think. I mean, if not that, certainly an NBA assistant. And he had a very strong relationship with Mo Cheeks, who's obviously been by his father's side at two stops in Oklahoma City and with the Bulls, and now he's moved on to the Knicks. So, look, he wants to be on an NBA bench, and he's putting in the dues to try to get there.
The joy of watching others develop is very much a parent mentality, as you and I are both aware, right? It's also to get outside of basketball a little bit. It's also my mentality as a manager with us, watching staff develop and taking joy of seeing them grow and improve and make great decisions, and they find joy in things. As a player, the love of practice is something you almost have to have. Like, it can't be about just want to get in the game. You've got to see those small improvements, that 1% every day, that 1% improvement every week to get better and take joy in that. I got a sense that there is a tremendous amount of pride that Billy Donovan has as a father for his son and what he's seen him accomplish so far.
I would agree with that. I will tell you, I talked to Billy probably for 10, 12 minutes about this subject, and it was really more matter of fact, but I'm sure, he did use that word that obviously he's proud, but he just got into, he was less sentimental about it and more just matter of fact about it. And it's clear that Billy lets his son be his own person. And again, he basically said, like, if he needs help or wants to run someone by me or has a question for me, I'm all ears. But it's clear, and this is something I'm learning as a parent of teenagers. You gotta let your kids fail sometimes, and just kind of, it's their life. And I talked to Billy a little bit about that. Like, I coached my youngest in youth baseball all the way up until high school. And then I got to high school and I removed myself from the equation. And that's actually been healthier and better. It's like now I just go and I just watch. And again, Billy obviously is an incredible resource for his son. But that was absolutely apparent in my conversations with both men, is that this is Billy Donovan III's life. This is his job. This is his opportunity. And the elder Billy is going to be there if he needs him, but is mostly taking a hands-off approach and letting his son sink or swim on his own. And I think that's the right way to go about
it. To that same line, one of the anecdotes in the story you shared is when Billy Donovan III got to Florida, at no point did Billy Donovan ask his son, "Hey, what are you hearing about in the locker room? What are you hearing about what guys are talking about?" Because he didn't want to betray that trust that Billy Donovan III had when he got there. And that you shared one of the stories is that he walked in the locker room in Florida one of the first times, and the room got quiet. And that Billy Donovan III said something to the effect of, "Guys, I'm not the FBI. It's okay. Like, you can talk." And so,
it.
like, that's kind of important, that dynamic there.
Yeah, I led with that anecdote. He said the line was, "Hey guys, I'm not the Fed." I mean, like, and look, that's the point that is resonant throughout the story. It's like that's what he's been living with. It's both blessing and curse. Like, as a player, teammates treated him a little differently because he's the coach's son, and he had to overcome that and earn their trust, which he did. Same thing now that he's trying to be a NBA head coach or NBA assistant coach. It's like, oh, you're just there because of your dad. No, man, he's grinding. And, like he said, he uses that as motivation and it just makes him work harder. And a coach's life is not easy. And he's got one young child and another one on the way. And he was very effusive in his compliments to his wife and her allowing him to chase his dream. In fact, he said the only one who gives him a hard time about this whole thing is his mom, Billy Donovan's wife, because she's like, "Are you sure you want to go into that coaching life?" So it was a fun story. I love family stories, and I joked with Billy Donovan, the elder one. I said, "This is low hanging fruit feature story. It's summer league, and I mean, this is an obvious angle, but Billy was really good with his time."
One of the things I thought was very interesting about being a successful head coach, it's not just about the X and O's. It's not just about the planning practice, and it's about how you manage people, manage players. Which, kind of going back to, I think one of the reasons that Phil Jackson is considered an all-time great, and maybe certainly Popovich as well, is that they handle egos and they handle players and situations. And like, to one of the questions Billy Donovan asked is, how do you respond if a player is late to practice? How you handle that situation in that locker room to that player and to the teammates and the rest of the team is going to be notable in how you react to that. Is it a star player? Is it a bench player that is late? And so handling egos and handling players is such a huge, massive part of being a head coach. What are the expectations for Billy Donovan III this year in coaching the G League team? In terms of, walk me through, if you can answer this question or not, a G League head coach. Are they responsible for essentially the same level of operation than a NBA head coach, or do they have more on their plate because there's less of a support staff for them in the G League? You don't have levels upon levels of people from PR to multiple assistants helping out.
Yeah, and just logistically, there's not as much infrastructure in terms of travel and things like that. So it's definitely less glamorous. You're traveling by bus a lot rather than plane. You're booking a lot of that travel yourself rather than having, a department do that for you at the NBA level. The nice thing about the G League in this day and age is almost all organizations are aligned with their NBA parent club. So like, they run the same offense. They sit in on organizational meetings and things like that. There's a lot of synergy between the two. I can just tell you, Billy Donovan III's personal expectations are just to further his players' careers. And that's what the good coaches are all about. They recognize this is a job, this is a livelihood, this is how these players feed themselves and their families. And, if he can get a guy promoted to the NBA or to a contract, long-term secured contract overseas, that's a win. And, G League is a transient, fluid league. So you're not really looking at wins and losses as much as you are about developing players. Obviously, if you win a championship along the way, like Nick Nurse did, or I'm not sure if actually Dan Craig did, the Bulls' new assistant. That's all better, but in large part, if you're doing your job, your players are getting poached. They're either going up to the big club or they're getting contracts overseas. So that's how most G League coaches judge their success, is how much they develop their own players.
So if you want to read any more of that story that K.C. had on Billy Donovan and Billy Donovan III, go to NBCSportsChicago.com. The story's up right now on the Bulls page. All right, let's move on to the actual Bulls team and some of the summer league stuff that we've seen so far. Matas Buzelis has really impressed me so far. I love his aggressiveness. I love his confidence that he's playing at. What are realistic expectations for him this season ahead? Like, is it realistic to expect him to start? I know there are some fans clamoring already to see him start. And listen, it's summer league. It's great that he's playing well, but it's only summer league. What is realistic? Like, what should we expect from him this season?
Well, I think the best thing about what is going on with Matas and is what's also going on with the Bulls. I mean, it's clear they're committing to a youth movement to try to, plan forward the next roster iteration and, have development within the organization. So I think he's going to get ample opportunity, and I think he's going to get ample opportunity to play through mistakes because he's going to make them. He's 19. And yes, this is only summer league, but some things do travel and translate. And one of them is what you've already pointed out, Bulldog, is that competitive edge. It's clear when he plays, he's got a chip on his shoulder. He's very confident. He told us on this very own podcast, Bulls Talk podcast, that he likes to talk trash and that he's incredibly mild-mannered off the court. But the direct quote he gave us is, "On the court, I want to kill you." I mean, he's really got like just this edge or this switch that flips when he goes onto the court. That was apparent from when we talked to him, even before we all saw him play in Summer League. And now that we've seen him play in Summer League, I would say that that's even more apparent. So that translates. Another thing that translates, what I love so much about what I've seen in these early games is he is seeking out contact. Now, he does not always have the strength or the wherewithal yet to, finish maybe through contact or make the right play as he's absorbing contact. But the fact that he's hunting contact and is not backing down from that physicality, as this body fills out, which at 19, it will, that bodes well for the future. So those are the things to me. Forget the shooting percentage, forget the points per game average, whatever all that is, that's Summer League. Those qualities to me really stand out and should have Bulls fans excited.
So it's fair to say we should expect him top 8 in the rotation, getting significant minutes off the bench, assuming a healthy roster next season.
Yeah, I mean, Billy Donovan is not an entitlement minutes guy, but I mean, it just makes sense. And quite frankly, the way the roster is structured, Torrey Craig is still there, but you're playing for the future. So why not throw him out there? I mean, we don't know for sure the rotation yet, but I mean, to me, he's certainly showing enough in Summer League that he deserves to at least get a crack at rotational minutes.
It's a good thing when a coach has tough decisions to make about minutes and rotation. One of the storylines that we'll be following coming into training camp in the preseason is certainly what does that rotation look like? Because assuming Levine's on this roster, which we all believe he will be, and assuming that Lonzo can come to training camp ready to play, that bench unit's going to look very different than it did last year. So this is going to be really interesting to see how everything mixed in. I think we all believe P. Will and Vooch will be starting in the front court. So
yeah, I'll tell you that in that we talked about the management conversation we had in the last podcast. I can elaborate at one point when we were having the casual conversation. I voiced to the room and I theorized. I mean, they didn't confirm this or they just were listening at this point, but I just assumed the starting lineup is going to be. Well, you guess what I said in the room. What my starting lineup is.
The starting lineup that I believe makes the most sense, because I can't see any of these three being on the bench, is your backcourt is Levine and Kobe. Giddey starts essentially at the point forward playing the three, which is kind of meaningless in terms of who's the point guard or not. And then P. Will and Vooch up front.
Okay. As usual, our minds think alike, Bulldog. I almost said great minds think alike, but that's giving ourselves too much credit.
Okay. Our minds think alike.
Yeah, and I also voiced defensively, yikes. I remember saying that in the room, which was met with a little bit of pushback, which is good. I mean, a point that was brought up, and we heard this from Arturas the night of the draft when, that was the first time he talked publicly since the Giddey trade, is that, and I brought this up on the podcast last time. I don't want to backtrack and talk too much about the management conversation, but, Giddey is an elite rebounder, and, defensive rebounding is a way to contribute defensively and finish a possession. So that was and Levine at one point was trending towards becoming a solid two-way player. I mean, his role on that Olympic team was largely defensive-minded, which is crazy to think. And Vooch, as we all know, started for a top 5 defense very recently for the Bulls. So I personally see that lineup being defensively challenged. I think Kobe competes hard at that end. And then obviously P. Will has shown the ability to be elite. But we'll have to see how that plays out. But yes, that is my guess at the starting lineup, which leaves, as you mentioned, pretty significant bench unit and possibilities. Obviously, you could stagger one of those starters, but you've got Io, you've got Buzelis, you've got Torrey Craig. Who am I missing?
Well, you got Javon Carter, potentially coming off the bench. Like, we don't know what his role is going to be next season.
Jalen Smith, Lonzo Ball. So
yes.
Yeah. So we got some possibilities there.
Yeah, but like Jalen Smith is going to have to get significant run off the bench because of the position he plays and being essentially the only true backup center on this roster. So like the making that lineup work is going to be tough. Like I would think, given that roster, that Carter's probably the unfortunate odd man out on a nightly basis.
Yeah,
in the rotation because of the backcourt situation.
Yeah.
But your phrasing of defensively challenged is putting it very kindly of that potential starting 5, because the perimeter defense, now, can guys improve? Absolutely. But based on what we've seen from that group, the perimeter defense is going to be very, very bad. And the interior defense, based on what we saw from Vooch last season, was a significant issue, which led, as we've discussed at length on this podcast, to their 3-point defense was in large part because of them overcompensating for the interior defense. And it would that starting 5 gives me great concern defensively. The way that starting 5 is going to potentially win games or outscore their opponent lineup, they are going to have to play at a very high pace. They're going to have to score the ball at a very efficient clip, which I think they can do, which is good. But the Bulls front office should not be under any delusions that would be a even average defensive lineup. But a lot can change between now and mid-October and what comes then. Let's move on to another summer league teammate of Buzelis, Julian Phillips, who, as we just discussed, is probably likely not in the rotation next season, given a healthy roster. Phillips has been impressive in summer league, though. What have you seen from him when you were in Vegas in person, and what have you seen from Phillips so far these last week and a half?
Well, so I forgot about Phillips. I think he's got a shot to be in the rotation. That's what I mean. They've got some depth, so we'll see. I will say the one thing about Julian Phillips that stands out to me is that he's not maybe always going to stand out in summer league because he's not like an individually like take over guy. I think what makes Julian Phillips so effective as a reserve is his ability to meld into 5-man units. I mean, he just makes instinctually right basketball plays, and they're subtle plays, they're fundamentally sound plays, so that he's more like impactful when he's playing in a unit of like other players that are better than him. And summer league, they're asking him to be one of the better players, and I'm not sure he's quite at that level yet. But in terms of his ability to be around the ball, he generates extra possessions with his offensive rebounding. He's such a good cutter. Obviously, the athleticism jumps out defensively. He can switch. He's got some good instincts at that end. And that's one thing we didn't really talk about with Buzelis that I should point out is his defense has really, really impressed me. Not only his shot blocking ability, but just his instincts. But back to Phillips, yeah. I mean, they're going to have a lot of options, but he to me is not like a lead player. He's more of a complementary player for sure.
I mean, there's a lot of roster spots and rotation minutes in this league for guys that can contribute off the bench and augment their teammates' skill sets. That's a big part of it. And certainly, I think for Julian, we just want to see that continued improvement. Like, if he can make that improvement that Io has made, if he can make that improvement that Kobe has made, I think that ultimately when it comes down to from a like development standpoint, just see him get better. And then if he can contribute off the bench, and I think you're right. I think there's probably some significant, some minutes for him on a nightly basis. Maybe not significant's the right word. I don't see him getting, 15 to 20 on a nightly basis. But if guys get hurt, it just takes a couple injuries and the rotation, a guy goes from being on the bench to getting 20 minutes a night with an injury or two. And that's how this league is. Guys take advantage of it and they get the minutes and then they keep those minutes because of how well they played. The Bulls summer league finale is on Saturday against the Lakers and Bronny James. K.C, I read this morning and this kind of really blows me away a little bit. The amount of bets being placed on Rookie of the Year, and this is not just one sports book, this is across multiple sports books. The most money is being placed on Zach Edey, which makes sense because, he not only is in a really good situation, he was drafted to, high profile college player. He's got a really, really good offensive game that, he's going to score points. That makes sense to me. The second most money being bet right now across all sports books on Rookie of the Year is for Bronny James. And now he is, for a lot of books, a 250 to 1 odds to win Rookie of the Year, which tracks what it should be. It blows me away that people are putting $1,000 bets, $100 bets on Bronny James to win Rookie of the Year purely because of who his dad is, the situation. I don't really understand it. I even at 500 to 1, 1,000 to 1, I cannot see any situation in which Bronny James wins Rookie of the Year this season.
Well, to be clear, this is for NBA Rookie of the Year and not GC
Yes.
Rookie of the Year.
Yes, NBA Rookie of the Year.
That would be my only comment to this conversation and this discussion. So, he obviously has struggled to shoot. He's got the high-profile incident with Jaylen Brown, opining that he's not an NBA player. And look, it's a great story, and I don't want to take any luster away from the accomplishment. And but he's not. He's a G League player right now, and could he be an NBA player? Absolutely. And you got to give the kid a lot of credit for the work he's put in and trying to make his own name for himself. And we started this conversation with the nepotism angle of the Donovans and how Billy Donovan III has had to work to overcome that. By all accounts, Bronny is trying to do the same thing, and he's not looking for handouts. Obviously, he's got a great opportunity, being drafted, but he's got to improve a lot if he's going to be at the NBA level.
Yeah, and I want to make this clear. This isn't a knock on Bronny
No,
James's work ethic. This isn't a knock on who he is as a player right now. To win Rookie of the Year, you're gonna have to get significant minutes in a
right.
rotation. Like if you want to put money on Buzelis to win Rookie of the Year, I'm not going to argue against you, right? Like certainly Zach Edey, I think is going to be put in a really good situation. Alex Sarr, any of these players drafted in the top 5 to subpar teams are going to get significant minutes. Many of them are going to start. And to win Rookie of the Year, you got to put up points and you got to be getting significant minutes because you can't be a 10-minute off the bench guy and win Rookie of the Year. But I understand the interest level that he is bringing to the league. I mean, to Summer League specifically. There are not many second round picks who would be the feature player uh, headlining the TV intro of a game, right? It's just not normally how it works. But because of who he is, there is an interest level there. There's a reason that ESPN does a lot of stories on him. It's because they get page views and clicks for him. And that's because people have a high interest in seeing what he's doing. I mean, he essentially has lived his entire life growing up, in the shadow of his father within the league itself, and he's in a spot right now where he's trying to earn his own way. And yeah, you're right. Bring it back full circle. Very much having a famous father can be a blessing and a curse at the same time. The
Yeah.
access that he's had to knowledge and training, I would gotta believe that Bronny James's basketball IQ is probably off the charts with his father's basketball IQ and just the access to the conversations that he's had on a daily basis with him about the game of basketball. But the challenges he's going to have to overcome are physical ones. He's only 6'1.5". He's got to really work on his game to be NBA ready. And to the kind of viral clip that Jaylen Brown had, Jaylen in that moment didn't know he was on camera. He was
No.
being, it was very much a just kind of observation he was making is Bronny right now may not be a true NBA level player, but that
Well,
doesn't mean he
it's not
can't
a
get there.
controversial take. I mean, it's just
No,
not.
it
It's not.
shouldn't be.
It's not.
Should
Yeah,
not
exactly.
be.
So, yeah. Last two things for me about this situation is like, if Bronny James is going to be an NBA player, he's going to do it at the defensive end. I mean, he's got that potential to be a reserve pest defensively at this level. I mean, maybe his offensive game will improve, but I'm talking about in the short term. And then lastly, I mean, the Lakers fans always travel well for summer league because it's such a short flight and everyone likes going to Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
So that Bulls-Lakers game is going to be fun. I hope Bronny plays. I assume he will still. They did set Dalton Connect one game, but they haven't set Bronny yet. So, the atmosphere Saturday night will be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I mean, this league, where it has fundamentally changed in the last 5+ years, there are roster spots
Yeah.
on every single team for guys that can defend
Yep.
and hit a three.
Yep.
Like you will have a long NBA career if you can do those two things as a player. And so that I agree. That's his path to success, long-term success in the league is be a notable defender. I mean, Alex Caruso is the great example of this mentality of this type of player.
Also
Right?
a Lakers G League veteran. So there you go.
Yeah, and summer league veteran at one point too.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Finally, KC, as we wrap up, summer leagues winding down for the Bulls. It'll be over in a few days. What do you do? Are you planning? Are there any stories you're planning on over the next year? Because you kind of have to like parse out these next few weeks and these next few months because we're about to hit the very dead time of the NBA calendar.
Yeah, I mean, you can always do the Zach LaVine trade angle story. So that'll be coming up at some point. And then also kind of just in a look back at the Bulls off season as we kind of wait till summer league to wrap that up. So be a couple more content opportunities between now and the end of the month. But yes, August and September are typically pretty dead months in the NBA. But, with Bulls, the LaVine trade story is going to be there until it's not. So we'll see how that plays out.
And even then, the only way that story is not there is one of two ways. Either trade goes through or he's
Right.
past the trade deadline of his final year in his contract with the Bulls. There will be trade rumors up until that point. So look for February 6th, 2026, as when that story finally ends. So reminder, check out Casey's work on the Billy Donovan story and anything Zachary Levine related. Bulls related, NBC Sports Chicago and NBCSportsChicago.com. You can check them out on Twitter/X at KCJ Hoop. I'm Kevin Anderson. This has been the Bulls Talk podcast brought to you by Toyota. Let's go places. Thank you, everybody, for listening, for subscribing, for watching on YouTube, for any comment you leave. We appreciate you. Always give us 5 stars if you feel that we deserve it. And if you don't feel like we deserve it, give us 5 stars anyway. We work hard. So thank you, everybody. Weekend. Go Bulls.
All right, now that's over. I want to tell you the 3 keys to being a real Chicago sports fan. It takes guts, sacrifice, and downloading the NBC Sports Chicago app. When there's highlights, you can pounce on them. When there's exclusive insights, you listen and take notes. And you won't get blindsided with the push alerts. So download it